Reimagining Success, Episode 11. You're listening to Reimagining Success, the podcast where we help you reimagine your future, designing a life and career beyond the 9 to 5 that allows you the freedom, flexibility and fulfillment that you've been dreaming of. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg. Now, let's get started on those dreams. Hello there and welcome back. Now, this week we're continuing our focus on personal branding, having looked first at why personal branding is important, whether you're an entrepreneur, a freelancer, or even a full-time employee. And then last week, how to find the story you want to tell, or rather that you want to be told about you. So if you've missed those two episodes, I would encourage you to go back and listen to the last couple of weeks, just to get the background of why it's important to focus on personal branding and also how to begin to map out the story that you're going to tell. However, the truth is that even with that information, even armed with those tools and that plan, the truth is that a lot of us still find it pretty uncomfortable to talk about ourselves, to promote and to publicize how great we are, and ultimately to sell. So the question I want to look at this week is, how can you get more comfortable with selling what is, well, effectively you? So first of all, why this aversion to selling? I think it's really interesting to explore why sales is such a dirty word. I know it isn't to everybody, I grant you. There are those superstars who love selling. I've had colleagues in the past who like nothing better than to talk about what they do and to negotiate hard on pricing, even in their spare time. But certainly that hasn't been the case for me. And I know a lot of people over in the One Step Outside Facebook group have told me that it's not something they feel comfortable with either. And I do think part of it is cultural. Because the basic association a lot of us have when we think of sales is that stereotype, the sleazy used car salesman or the buy one, get one free or crazy discounts that they have on TV or in stores. All those unsolicited, incredibly annoying, spammy junk emails that fill our inboxes these days. And in Northern Europe, at least, there is this idea that we shouldn't think of ourselves to be better than others. We shouldn't blow our own trumpet. And in Sweden, especially, I come from a Swedish background, we should all be treated very equal, which sounds lovely, but it does mean that, we're not supposed to be pushing ourselves, telling people how great we are and so on. In the UK, I think this often leads to a sense of false modesty, where even though we know we're good at something, we actually play it down. And certainly at school, I know that, I even though I was good and I got good grades and so on, I'd actually get teased by friends, so-called friends, classmates, I suppose, for doing well in school. And I'd actually study less and less, and I'd always try to downplay the result I got because it wasn't actually a good thing. Certainly wasn't something to be proud of in the context of being a teenager at secondary school to perform well at school, for example. And in the US, and now probably more and more in the culture of England as well, we have this idea of the humble brag, which is also sort of a bit of false modesty in the sense that we actually do know and we want people to know how good we are, but we're sort of sharing that in an underhand way. Now, another reason that it feels uncomfortable to sell ourselves is that we've never had to do it before. As a full-time employee in a big corporation, we have, first of all, an established brand and company with a history and heritage, which we can tap into. So when I was working at Procter & Gamble, I was working, on big name brands like Dolce & Gabbana, Hugo Boss, and so on, Puma. Both of those brands, both the big company name and the actual specific brand I was working on, of course, had already a massive loyal fan base, people who weren't customers still knew of them, and we built on that. So it wasn't that we had to suddenly, from scratch, I certainly didn't have to suddenly try to persuade people that this is an incredible brand. At least we had that background. Secondly, there was a whole function, whole team dedicated to sales. So in my case, I could focus on marketing, or if you're in finance or whatever your role. So there were sales specialists who would be out in the markets selling to the stores and so on. So that wasn't something I had to do. And then third, of course, you have a boss or a manager who, hopefully at least, is supporting you and recommending you when it comes to salary increases and promotions. So you don't even have to sell yourself as an individual, although, we did in the last episode when we talked about personal branding, talk about how important it is with that pie model, the performance, image and exposure, to take some responsibility for putting forward our personal brand. But certainly most of us haven't had to do a lot of selling in that sense, even internally. However, running your own business, you are going to need to get comfortable with doing all this yourself. Definitely at the beginning. If you plan to build an empire, then by all means, you'll be hiring sales reps and so on. But at the beginning, we definitely need to get comfortable with doing it ourselves. And even if you do hire people, you're going to need to, be able to coach them and train them as well. So here's the thing. You have to sell. You have to have clients in order to have a business. Because otherwise it's just a hobby or a charity. And yes, you may love what you do, but that doesn't mean that you should do it for free. And you certainly won't be able to afford to continue if you're not generating income. So if you want to have a business, you're going to need to sell. Let's just stop there, shall we? No, let's keep going. So on a personal level, it's sales, it's the clients and the money that's coming in that is ultimately going to allow you precisely that freedom, flexibility and fulfillment that I'm always talking about, and anything else that you've dreamed of when it comes to the life you want to lead. So as much as there is so much more to success than money, money is an important means to an end. Having that success, financial success in the business is what's going to free up your time, your energy, and focus to be able to do all those other wonderful things. And finally, and this is particularly important, you cannot help people get the result they want that you're passionate about helping them with unless they actually work with you, which means they buy from you, and that means you're selling to them. Because I can give you, for example, all sorts of free blog posts and videos and resources, but that's never going to get you the quality of support, the one-on-one, the kind of progress that you can expect to get if you actually join me in either my one-on-one coaching or in a group program. So in order for me to actually ultimately help you with reimagining success, with taking that leap out of the corporate 9-to-5 for good and with achieving your goals, I need to be able to sell to you so that you can actually work with me, so I can give you my absolute best and help you achieve those goals. So that's really important to think about. You can't help people properly. You can't help them as much as you know that you can help them unless they actually work with you. And that does mean buying from you. So this final point on helping people is important to bear in mind when it comes to changing how you think about selling. Because selling really is just that. It's helping people. It's serving them. You have to understand that it's by selling effectively to people who urgently need what you have to offer that you're actually going to be able to help them get that result. So it's important to understand your bigger why. So we talked about your why in the why it's important to have a personal brand episode a couple of weeks ago. But what is your bigger why or mission that's behind the business? What are you trying to achieve? How are you looking to help people, and why should people care? But understanding your why will help you get excited about selling, because you know, if I sell to these people, if they buy into my program or whatever it is, I can actually achieve that bigger why for them. I can make this incredible thing happen for them or help them do this, that and the other, and I can contribute to the world in this wonderful way. And next, from a more personal perspective, your family, your lifestyle, your own life. What would selling more mean for you and your family? So if you got 5 more clients or earned £10,000 more, what would that look like? If you charged the higher rate, could you work fewer hours? Could you free up time to spend with your young family? Could you take more holidays, more expensive holidays? Could you stop stressing about money and worrying about maybe having to go back to a full-time job, which after all you don't want to do? Could you start saying no to all those pesky clients who never pay on time, who weigh you down and aren't really the people you want to work with, and then choose intentionally to work only with the most wonderful, delightful clients who are a pleasure to work with? So what is your personal why? What would selling more actually free up for you, make possible for you? So what would it make possible for the client, and what would it make possible for you? Reframing how you think about selling and understanding how important it is to you and your business is going to help you get more comfortable with the idea and, importantly, become interested in learning how you can get better. Because yes, there is a skill to it. Some people maybe are born salesmen, but that's not to say that we can't learn. But, you need to care. You need to be committed enough to realize, yes, this is an important skill I need to develop. Okay, so let's say you believe me. Selling is important and you're beginning to see that it can be meaningful to you, both personally and professionally. Maybe you still feel a little bit reluctant and uncomfortable with the idea, and you wonder how can you actually go about this in an authentic and non-sleazy way. Very important. And the first thing to realize is, and I tell my clients this, you don't have to do what other people are doing. You don't have to copy people. You certainly don't have to pretend to be someone you're not. And you don't have to be unethical by any means. It's completely up to you to find the approach, the techniques that feel right to you and to your clients. And of course, the ones you think will work, and you need to test those and see. So you don't have to lie. You don't have to pretend there are limited spaces available when actually you can have as many people as you want, or create a false sense of urgency when there actually is no deadline. You don't have to do any of those sort of fake, uncomfortable things. You're welcome to if that feels right for you, but don't feel that you have to copy someone else's approach and there's only one way of selling and that doesn't feel right to you, so boom, you're not going to sell. No, there are many ways of selling. You need to find the approach that works for you. And the really good news is that people buy from people. Whether you're a massive business or just starting out, people really buy into stories, that why that we talked about. And by being yourself, by communicating your mission, your values, your strengths, all this that we talked about last week in terms of what your personal brand represents, you are going to attract the right clients for you. And the right clients for you are clients who will be interested in you, who will respect you for who you are, and who want to work with you precisely because of who you are and what you do. So it's a little bit like, going off piste here a little bit, meeting somebody in a relationship. So we can pretend to be someone we're not. We can pretend to be that dainty, delicate princess or whatever it is to attract a particular type of man, or we can pretend not to be high maintenance. We can act in a certain way, pretend we like hard rock music, I don't know. But ultimately, if these men are going to be attracted to that particular persona and that's not you, either you're going to have to maintain that persona the rest of your life, which is not particularly appealing, or they will ultimately find out the truth and they're going to be disappointed. In the same way, if you can bear with me, if you're pretending to be a certain type of consultant or coach or graphic designer, whatever it is, either you're going to have to continue that charade when the client comes on, and that will be potentially disconnected from your values. It'll be different to who you actually are and who you want to be, and you'll have to constantly be forcing yourself to do something that's not natural. Or again, they'll come on expecting one type of coaching or consulting or whatever it is, and they'll leave very disappointed. So either you'll be frustrated or they'll be frustrated. There is no point in portraying a fake brand that then attracts the wrong people. So the good news is hopefully that takes the pressure off in relationships and in your business, not to pretend to be someone you're not to try to present that perfect image. Again, the other good news is that imperfection is cool now, if I can say that. So people embrace those genuine connections. We want to see the real story, the behind the scenes. Sometimes this goes maybe too far. You still want to keep it professional. Again, it's up to you how much you share, but people want the real stories. They want the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs. Tech fails happen, mistakes are there and so on. But the point is who you are. Can they trust you? Do they understand and empathize with you? And do you, understand and empathize with them, most importantly? So again, stay true to who you are. Go back to that episode if you haven't already last week, get clear on your mission, your values, your strengths, and then communicate that effectively, being yourself, not trying to be someone else, and you will attract the right people for you. Everybody has a tribe. There are people for everybody. It could be niche, but there are people who will love you for exactly who you are, and that's amazing. So don't worry, don't try to copy someone else. The whole point, I'd say, of having your own business is that you are creating something that is uniquely you, based on your unique experience, personality, beliefs. You might have some things that you think are completely irrelevant to the business, but actually once you get confident enough to weave those into the story you tell, you become so much more interesting, so much more aligned in yourself, and so much more effective actually as a business. Okay, so aside from changing your mindset, changing the way you think about selling, the other thing to do when it comes to becoming more comfortable with selling is, of course, to get clear on your strategy. So part of that is the personal brand strategy, effectively, that we looked at last week. Again, your bigger why, your values, your skills and strengths, and your credibility. And part of it is then also how you're going to communicate that in your content and marketing strategy. And we will come back to that in the next few weeks. But getting clear on your strategy, first of all, and then practice and refine as you go. So get super clear on who you are, the clients you work with, what you do, how you can help. Start creating content, start putting yourself out there. Have conversations and begin to build relationships with people. Because it's only by getting out there and trying to sell that you'll learn what works and what doesn't. And you're going to evolve and refine your message and approach as you go. And just before wrapping up, I do want to share, I suppose, a fail on my part, but something that I've learned from. A couple of years ago, I had an article shared by Arianna Huffington on LinkedIn. Hooray! Massive influx of visitors to my website. Great. Lots of people signed up to my various opt-ins and email lists and so on. And I got, a good 100+ people into my free consultation calls. Now, at that time, I had no qualification form for people to fill in before they came on the call. So I had no idea who they were, what they wanted. These were people presumably new to my business and to me, so they didn't know, like, and trust me yet. They just read this one article. That message resonated, but of course many of those people were probably just looking for some free advice. How did you do this? What should I do? Just getting reassurance or even permission to do what I'd done. The article, by the way, was 10 things I'd learned since quitting my job without a backup plan, which proved very popular with people. Lots of people found that message very inspiring and reassuring. But my mistake was I got onto all these calls, and I can't remember now, but if I closed any client, I'd be surprised. So maybe 1, 2 max out of those 100+ people actually, started working with me. And yes, you can argue that the conversion rate is always going to be, much lower than you think or whatever. But I certainly didn't at that point realize that I had to sell. I was trying to coach them. I was trying to pack as much value as possible into that call. And as I'm sure we'll talk about in another call, there is a difference between marketing and selling. As it turns out, I come from a marketing background. I've trained as a coach, and I want to help people. And that's, again, perhaps a challenge, a final challenge to think about. We ultimately do want to help people, but the danger is that in those calls, for example, which is, a great sales mechanism, again, we'll come back to this, you overdo it. You give too much, you confuse. They'll go off and think, oh my goodness, I have to solve all these things that she's given me, and they're not going to work with you, right? Because you've just actually done them a disservice. You've overwhelmed them. They're heading off to work on their own, and then you're not going to be able to help them. So again, coming full circle, if selling is helping, selling is serving, then actually we need to learn how to sell on those calls in that case, for example, or whatever the mechanism is. So that's something I learned. Since then, I've been really working on how to integrate the actual selling part and trying to, first of all, qualify the prospects to make sure that they are good targets. And so I understand that I really, yes, can help them with my particular programs. Obviously developing more programs and things to make sure that I have more offerings, different price points and different results to help people with. And then working on how confident I feel with owning my message, with communicating those values, my strengths and the credibility as well. So that's just an example. We're not necessarily, I certainly wasn't born salespeople. We're not born as a personal brand either, although some babies do have a strong personality when they come out. But this is something we can and must really learn. So again, in the coming weeks, we are going to be getting more concrete as to how you can assess where you are today when it comes to your personal brand. How you can concretely start crafting the story that you want to tell. So you found this story, now you've got this beautiful idea and strategy. How are you going to bring that to life? And then ultimately, how can you integrate selling into your daily activities so that it really becomes second nature? So it's not that horrible, oh God, now I have to sell. That's the worst thing you could do on a call or a conversation. You have this amazing, genuine relationship building chat. And then you go, can I tell you about my pricing? And do you think you'd want to work with me? That's not what we want. So we want this to become a fully integrated, natural, authentic piece of the conversation. Once we've understood their problems, once we've understood that we can help them, that should then flow really nicely into, actually, I'd love to help you with this, I can offer that, or whatever it is. So it's all natural, genuine, building relationships, and it's not this icky, superficial thing that we're sort of tagging on the end. So I hope you found today's session useful. Again, a little bit more around thinking and mindset around what selling means and how we need to get comfortable with that. And in the coming weeks, we will be getting more concrete, starting with next week, how you can assess where you are today when it comes to your personal brand online and offline. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next week. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to Reimagining Success with Anna Lundberg. If you're getting value from the show, I would be really grateful if you could give me a rating and review so that more people can find us and start reimagining success for themselves. Thank you so much for your support.